who was the fastest pitcher in Major League Baseball history. If you go by the data, that which is documented, you have to say Aroldis Chapman is the fastest ever. Clocked at 105.8 miles per hour. That is a documented Major League Baseball record. However, is it possible, just possible, that a certain somebody may have thrown harder than Chapman before radar guns were common? And yes, as you've probably already surmised, the purpose of this video is to get you to examine the possibility that one Nolan Ryan was, in fact, the hardest thrower in Major League Baseball history. All right, a couple of quick things before we get going. First off, this is not going to be a rehash of Jonathan Hawk's brilliant documentary Fastball, in which it was basically extrapolated through the use of physics that Nolan Ryan was the fastest pitcher in Major League history. We're not going to rehash that, although we will take a brief look at it. And secondly, I'm not one of these Nolan Ryan fans who insists that he's the greatest pitcher in baseball history. Is he a legend? Yes. Is he a Hall of Famer? Yes. But when you start saying he's the greatest pitcher in baseball history, I feel that you are overrating him. He's certainly a Hall of Famer, certainly a legend, and I'm certainly a fan of his, but the best ever? No. Again, my purpose with this video is to open your mind to the possibility that Nolan Ryan was, in fact, the hardest thrower in Major League history. And that's without disrespecting anybody that came before him, such as Bob Feller or Sandy Koufax or others. Now, I'm no physicist and I don't claim to be, so my method of demonstrating this will be in utilizing two things that most of you have: decent eyesight and a little bit of common sense. I'll use a side by side comparison between Aroldis Chapman and Nolan Ryan, and then we'll take a look back using logic at some of Ryan's prior years before radar guns were available. All right, now before we cut loose with this video, I want to explain it real quick. On the left, you have Aroldis Chapman and a documented pitch at 105 miles per hour. It's not his record, 105.8, but it is documented at 105. That is what the radar gun got it at. So we know for an absolute fact that on the left, this is about as hard as Aroldis Chapman is capable of throwing. It's just slightly under his major league record. It is at 105 plus change. On the right, we have a pitch from Nolan Ryan, a random pitch, undocumented, unclocked. It's just one of thousands of pitches that he threw that were unclocked. And that's an important factor to keep in mind when comparing Chapman with Ryan. Every pitch that Aroldis Chapman has thrown in a major league game has been documented. There's a radar gun at every game in the majors these days, and they always clock you just after the release point, which shows your maximum velocity. Nolan Ryan, in his prime years from 72 to 74, was largely unclocked, and he was never clocked with a radar gun aimed at the release point or just after the release point, which adds 5 to 6 miles per hour. So it's an unfair comparison to simply say Chapman was the fastest. And when I speak of Ryan's prime years, I speak of his physical peak. 1972 through 1974, Ryan was at his physical peak, throwing the hardest that he had ever thrown. When he was older, he became a better pitcher. He developed a changeup, he had better control, but he was not throwing as hard. And yes, granted, I know that he had been clocked in the high 90s and all that when he was in his 40s, but he was being clocked at the release point at that time. He was never clocked at the release point when he was at his physical peak. And in my humble opinion, had we seen that, we'd have major league records set by Nolan Ryan on the order of 107 or 108 miles per hour. And I'm quite confident when I say that. All right, now with that, let me get this tape rolling and I'll give you a visual demonstration of why I'm convinced Nolan Ryan was the hardest thrower ever. Again, on the left, a 105-mile-an-hour pitch from Aroldis Chapman, that is documented. And on the right, we've got Nolan Ryan in an undocumented pitch, unclocked, pitching to Jim Rice of Boston in 1975 in a game he got beat, allowing 3 home runs. Gave up a home run to Bernie Carbo, one to Yastrzemski, and one to Dwight Evans. It was not Nolan Ryan's night. He did not have his best stuff. Keep that in mind. Now, one flaw in this comparison, I freely admit, is syncing up the two pitchers. I did the very best I could to sync them up about a foot away from the release point to get it as close as possible. But we're not trying to decide which pitch here is faster. We're merely trying to illustrate how close Ryan was to Chapman's record, even on an off night in Boston. This is just a random unclocked pitch from Ryan. We don't know if this is the hardest pitch Ryan ever threw, but it's dang close to Chapman. We'll run them at real time at first, and then we'll slow it down and give you a freeze frame. Now, in this segment, take a look at both pitchers, left then right, left then right. Take a look at both of them. Here's 3 examples. Boom, boom, and boom. Now we'll go to slow motion. All right. Take a look at the ball and when it lands in the glove on both sides, boom. And from here, we'll go into a repeat of our slow motion look at this same exact pitch. And we will freeze it when the ball from Chapman's hand hits the glove on the left. Take a quick look at Chapman on the left. And then we'll freeze it when it hits the glove right now. Boom. Now look at Ryan on the right. Jim Rice has clearly already swung through it, and the ball's hitting the glove. The ball's hitting the glove. Now, if that isn't right there with Chapman, it is extremely close. Now, again, the question isn't which guy threw the harder pitch in these frames. It's not. We're only trying to show how close Ryan was on this particular pitch. And the thing that's very important, that this is one of thousands upon thousands of undocumented, unclocked pitches by Nolan Ryan when he was in his physical peak years. Now, if it's not, if Nolan Ryan did not throw harder than Aroldis Chapman, then you have to conclude that this very pitch, this one pitch he threw in a losing game, is the hardest pitch he ever threw. If in his peak year, 72, 73, or 74, he ever once threw a pitch that was a couple of miles an hour faster than this one, guess what? He is the fastest pitcher in history. Period. And more than likely, he probably threw one that was 3 or 4 miles an hour faster. He didn't have good stuff this night. It was in 1975 when he was past his physical peak. Nolan Ryan, ladies and gentlemen, is the hardest thrower in Major League history. I appreciate you watching. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the subscribe button. Please hit like, please hit share, and please hit the little bell so you'll get notifications when we come up with new videos. We appreciate it. My name is Evan Wren of Big Country Preps, and please continue to enjoy your holiday.